Piaget's Stages of Child and Adolescent Development. My name is Sandy Andriaccio, and let's learn a little bit about child development. First, who is this Jean Piaget? Jean Piaget was a child psychologist. He was born in 1896. He died in 1980. He worked at the J.J. Rousseau Institute in Geneva, and he worked there on developing the IQ test, which we all know about. An interesting fact that I have here is that he used his own children as his subjects in his research. He also used one of his nephews. He did write 5 books on child psychology. Here's a quote by Jean Piaget. "Children have a real understanding only of that which they invent themselves. And each time we try to teach them something too quickly, we keep them from reinventing it themselves." So in essence, if we try and teach them something too early, they're never really going to learn it because they need to learn on their own. Piaget says there are 4 stages of cognitive development: sensory motor, pre-operational, concrete operational, and formal operational. And we're going to take a look at each one of those. Sensory motor is the first stage of development. As you can see, it's between birth and the age of 2, although that is a little fluctuates, the age fluctuates a little. They do learn a lot of things at this age. This is the stage where they learn through trial and error. If they try something and it doesn't work, they will try it again and again. They also begin to develop object permanence, which is when you show them an object or a toy and they play with it, if you take it away and they can't see it anymore, does it really exist? And they are just beginning to understand that even if you take their toy away, it's someplace and they can find it. They learn at this stage that they are a separate being. They're actually not part of their mother or someone else, and that their actions can actually cause things to happen. So if, for instance, they crawl off of their blanket and they feel rough sand at the beach, they know that they have made that happen, and it's just not coincidental that there's rough sand there. At this stage, their memory is starting to develop, and language development occurs. Language development doesn't mean they are speaking at this stage. It means they are showing the beginning signs of language. So if your child is saying words, single words, making sounds, this is what happens in the sensory motor. You can probably figure out now that sensory motor means it has to do with the 5 senses, so they are learning through their sight, the sound, their touch, their taste, and also through movement. Sensory, senses, motor, movement. So if you're wondering why children put everything in their mouth when they're a baby, it's because they're in this sensory motor stage. The next stage is the pre-operational stage, and that's between the ages of 2 and 7. This is where they develop memory and imagination. This is where you might see children talking to imaginary friends. There's no one there, but they're having a conversation. That would be because they are in the pre-operational stage and they're developing their imagination. This is also an age where they're very egocentric, and you might think that's a bad thing, but it's not at all. Part of their development is that they don't realize there are other people that have other feelings or thoughts different from what their own is. So for instance, if you're watching TV and your child walks right in front of you and blocks the view, they have no idea that you're sitting behind them wanting to see the TV as well. So no need to holler about that. Just ask them nicely to sit down because they just don't have a clue. This is an interesting stage because this is where they start to see things symbolically. For instance, if you show them a picture of a dog, they will be able to identify that as a dog. And if you show them the word dog as they get to the end of this stage, they will be able to picture in their mind that it is actually a dog. They do begin to think in concrete terms, and also this is the age or the stage where the emergence of language begins. So between 2 and 7 years, the more words that children hear, the better their vocabulary will be. It's very important at this age to expose your children to as many words as possible. The next stage is the concrete operational stage, and this is between 7 and 12 years old, and this is a stage where they have logical reasoning. So if you give them, for instance, a math problem and you say 4 plus 6 is 10, they will or should be able to figure out then that 10 minus 6 is 4. So they will have logical reasoning. They also have inductive reasoning, and inductive reasoning is when you go from a specific piece of information to a general topic. So they begin that process. They're a little less egocentric now because they're understanding there are other people that have other ideas and that their own thoughts and feelings may actually be unique to themselves. There's a couple tests that you can do to see if your children are in this stage. One is if you take 2 glasses of water that are filled to exactly the same height, and then you change them and you pour one into a tall skinny glass so it looks really high, and you pour one into a short fat glass so it looks like there's only a little bit. If they're in this stage, they'll be able to tell you that there's still the same amount of water even though it looks different. If they cannot tell you that, they are in the prior stage. Another test would be to take 2 balls of clay or Play-Doh and have them be exactly the same size, and then flatten one right out and leave the other one as a ball and ask them which one is bigger. If they can tell you that they're still the same size, they will be in the concrete operational stage. So you could try that. Formal operational stage is the last stage. The formal operational stage goes from about 12 years to adult, and the concepts that you see in this stage are, they can relate to very abstract concepts. Things such as justice and moral issues, philosophical issues, social issues, political issues. They are at the stage where they can relate to that. They can formulate hypotheses based on information that they already know and things that they are learning. In this stage, they have deductive logic, which is the opposite of inductive. It's when you start at a general principle and you can pick out specific information from that general principle. In this stage, we understand consequences for our actions, and we really are good at moral reasoning, understanding what's right and what's wrong and why. Again, each of these stages, it varies. The ages are not permanent. So, it's about birth to 2 and 2 to 7, 7 to 12, and 12 and up. I do have some questions for you, or some things you can contemplate. With the knowledge that you've just learned about Piaget, will this change the instructional strategies you use in your classroom? How do Piaget's stages of development affect students' learning preferences? And lastly, can you have students in different stages in your classroom? If so, how do you differentiate your instruction to better serve the needs of all students? Thank you, and have a great day.